God was pierced by bullets and hate and rage, propelled by not just gunpowder, but by a poison that has for too long haunted this nation. And what is that poison? White supremacy. Oh, it is. It's a poison. Throughout our history, it's ripped this nation apart. This has no place in America. Not today, tomorrow, or ever.
Hi again, everyone. It's 5 o'clock in New York. I'm Ali Velshi, in for Nicolle Wallace. Fresh off a fiery speech on the eve of January 6th, where he addressed the critical decision about the fate of our democracy that this country will make in November, President Biden today with another powerful address, drawing a clear line that hate and racism have no place here in America. The president spoke this afternoon at Mother Emmanuel Church in Charleston, South Carolina, the site of a horrific mass shooting by a white supremacist 9 years ago. The president talked of the pain and suffering that day, how it was a moment that awakened this country, yet that same threat of white supremacy remains. Biden's remarks on the need to root out racism and extremism in this country, drawing a stark contrast with his likely opponent in the 2024 race, who just this weekend at a rally said that the Civil War could have been negotiated. A comment which prompted this response from former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, quote, which part of the Civil War could have been negotiated? The slavery part? The secession part? Whether Lincoln should have preserved the Union? Questions for members of the GOP, the party of Lincoln, who have endorsed Donald Trump. How can you possibly defend this? End quote. Cheney getting to the point that underscores all of this. It's not just Trump. White supremacy is now inextricably linked to today's Republican Party. Just recently, Trump's primary opponent, Nikki Haley, the former governor of South Carolina, did not acknowledge slavery as the cause of the Civil War. We've seen those in the GOP launch attacks on school curriculums, trying to deny the true history of black Americans. We've seen them engage with white supremacists, espouse hateful rhetoric, go after immigrants, meaning the fight for freedom and justice is very much ongoing, as President Biden recognized today.
We can't just choose to learn what we want to know and not what we should know. We should know the good, the bad, the truth of who we are. That's what great nations do, and we're a great nation, the greatest of all nations. We're not perfect, but at our best, we learn from our past and we look to the future. A nation continuously striving to be a more perfect union.
And that's where we start this hour with Princeton University professor and distinguished political scholar Eddie Glaude, plus political strategist Matt Dowd. And here with me at the table, New York Times Editorial Board member Mara Gay. Welcome to all of you. Mara, let me just start with you, please, because Joe Biden is leaning into this. He started his 2020 campaign with a discussion about the soul of the nation. At that point, it was Charlottesville, which still seemed like a bit of an outlier back then, the weirdness of Charlottesville, and people would be marching through the streets with tiki torches. It's become much more mainstream under Donald Trump, and Joe Biden feels like this is the thing to campaign on.
Well, I think we know that Americans do care about democracy. I also think it's appropriate that these remarks were given in a historically black church, and of course, where the tragic, horrific, racist shooting happened in 2015. I was actually there in the aftermath of that, covering that as a news reporter. It was just a horrendous time. And so I think it's appropriate because the relationship between citizenship for Black Americans and democracy has always been extremely close in this country. And so, you know, Black Americans really fully understand just how closely tied our rights are to rights for all people in the United States. And I think that Joe Biden understands that, too. This is part of why the black voters have been so closely allied in recent years with the Democratic Party. They see that connection. And they see Republicans in this moment, in these times, as not just espousing policies that they don't like, but actually as being anti-democratic in this moment. It's very easy for Black Americans to see when you have a history in this country of being denied your rights. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation. And I actually think it's really high time for us to confront white supremacy and the role it plays in our politics in general. So it's really nice to see not just Joe Biden, but Republicans as well, like Liz Cheney, weighing in and making that connection. So I think too many Americans don't know even just basic facts about our history. It seems like maybe we need to go there.
Yeah, I mean, surprising, but yeah, I think we do. Maybe not surprising, Eddie Glaude. The grievance politics of Donald Trump and the Republican Party are becoming intertwined with this white supremacy issue, much in the way, as President Biden acknowledged today, that occurred after the Civil War, with the lost cause narrative gaining ground. There's this weird grievance narrative tied to white people and their history in this country that is taking deep root within the Republican Party at the moment.
Yeah, you know, Ali, that's absolutely right. I mean, the president actually called it a second lost cause. And in that sense, there's this narrative, this effort to rewrite the story of the United States, to reject our efforts to actually achieve a genuinely multiracial democracy and tell ourselves a story that affirms our inherent goodness and downplays the ugliness of our past and present. And so I think it's really important for us to understand this contradiction that's been at the heart of the American experiment since the beginning. Our idea of ourselves as a democracy committed to the equality of all persons, that everyone has dignity and standing, and our commitment to the idea of whiteness. So America has been imagined as a nation of laws, as a country predicated upon an idea. And at the same time, Ali, it has been imagined as a nation predicated on blood or race. And you can see that contradiction in our immigration law. And it's clashing over and over again. And it resulted in over 700,000 people dead in the Civil War. And we're still fighting that Civil War right now. And President Biden named it this morning, today. And I think that's really important as we move forward.
Matt, there's some concern in the Democratic Party about two things that are going on. One is a lack of enthusiasm amongst certain groups that have said that they may not come out to vote for Joe Biden, or not enough's happened. The White House and the administration are sort of trying to respond with this idea that this election is existential, right? Everybody says it's the most important election of our time, but this time it might actually be. Whether the issue is democracy, or the issue is freedoms and reproductive rights, or racial equality, or the economy. How do you think things are going so far in this campaign, and what would you like to see happen?
Well, first, Ali, I'm so glad we're having this conversation. We could go on days on this conversation, because I think it's that important. I actually think, and I've said so all along, and I know Eddie and I have had this conversation a number of times, that this race needs to be about the existence of democracy and what that means and the moral cause of democracy. So I think the president's right about that. But one thing I think politicians need to understand, and people that want elections need to understand, is voters act in their self-interest. Abraham Lincoln knew this. When you go back and look at all of Lincoln's arguments that he made in the great moral cause of the Union, he made many of those arguments in voters' self-interest. And I think what you have to do is, why does democracy matter to the average person in their living room, not just theoretical and not just as a moral cause, but as a practical cause? What does that mean for their ability to get a minimum wage? What does that mean to get hired in a job? What does democracy mean in order to protect women's health freedoms? What does democracy mean in order to do something about climate change? All of those issues are completely dependent on the existence of a democracy and on the existence of the will of the people. That's one hand. The other part of this conversation, I think it's so important, is this is for us to say that this shouldn't be part of America today ignores the fact that many times that it has been part of America, as Eddie said. Let me give you a reason why this resonates so well and why Trump and the Republicans use this issue. And I would call it white Christian nationalism, because it's not just about race. It's about whether or not you're other on religion, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're a Jew. All of those things are tied together in a faith and a racial way, white Christian nationalism. For 200 years of our country, Ali, white, male, Christian, straight people held 95% of the positions of power for 200 years. 95% of them were held by white, male, Christian, straight people. And only in the last 30 years has that number gone down to 80%. And that group of people represent 27% of the population. White, Christian, male, straight people represent 20. And what Donald Trump is leaning into this idea that these people have a grievance that they now only hold 80% of the positions of power. And that's the problem that we have, is not only is it an unwillingness to share, it's an unwillingness to even give people more of a seat at the table. People aren't arguing, oh, only give those folks 27%. The fact that 80% of them that still have power, but are still so concerned, really goes to the poison that exists in the American soil that has existed for 250 years.